Seen from above, this island looks like a planet that never finished cooling. A sheet of ice, up to 3 kilometers thick, buries 80% of it. A frozen interior so vast it makes its own weather. Yet around the rim, life glows in full color. Villages of red, blue, and yellow houses cling to the bare rock. Sled dogs doze on hillsides, above harbors full of fishing boats, and past all of it, silently, drift icebergs taller than cathedrals. This is Greenland, the largest island on Earth, home to about 56,000 people, with not a single road connecting any two of their towns. For a full year now, the world has been talking about this island. Then, one afternoon this July, the island answered back. An iceberg the size of a city block rolled over on a live camera in front of a town called Ilulissat. In that town, icebergs drift past the windows, the way traffic rolls past other people's houses. Millions watched the clip. Almost nobody could name the place. Today, we fix that. We cross Greenland from the town, where the sea delivers mountains, to a former American base near the top of the world, to villages of fewer than 100 people, chasing one question. Not who should own this island, but how anyone manages to live on it. Stay to the very end, and you will see why the headlines have Greenland backwards. In Greenlandic, Ilulissat simply means the icebergs, and no town on Earth wears its name more literally. About 4,600 people live here, 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle, sharing their streets with roughly 3,500 sled dogs. That is nearly one dog for every human. Bright wooden houses stand scattered across dark rock, and behind their kitchen windows, white giants slide silently along the horizon, day and night, all year long. On July 25, 2026, a webcam above the bay caught the show of the year. A giant berg cracking, leaning, and rolling belly up over a single hour, heaving waves across the water while mist climbed hundreds of feet. The clip stunned the world. It did not stun this town. People here know exactly what the ice can do because they have grown up on its schedule. Along the shore below the old cemetery, signs warn visitors in several languages never to walk down to the water's edge. A calving iceberg can send a surge across the bay with almost no warning, and the sea does not forgive slow reactions. Locals rarely need the signs. They read the water the way city people read traffic lights. The ice here has a voice, and the town lives inside its conversation. Deep cracks roll across the bay like distant thunder, sometimes in the middle of dinner, sometimes during the morning school run, and a collapsing berg can send a boom through the streets that rattles cutlery in kitchen drawers. First-time visitors flinch and reach for their cameras. Residents do not even pause their sentences. They simply glance at the bay, note what has changed, and carry on. Because the bay never looks the same 2 days in a row. New white towers rise, where yesterday there was open water, and open water spreads where a mountain stood. Work here still follows the ice as well. Ilulissat is one of Greenland's great fishing towns, and small boats thread between icebergs every morning on their way to the halibut grounds. A skipper might steer around a berg taller than a church, note that it has drifted overnight, and adjust his route home accordingly. No chart can map a harbor that redesigns itself every day, so experience does the mapping instead. And every one of those drifting giants comes from the same address. A few miles south of town, a tongue of the ice sheet pushes into a long fjord and breaks apart, over and over, like a factory that has never once closed. The fjord has a name that every glaciologist on Earth knows. The locals just call it the place where the ice is born. The Ilulissat Ice Fjord has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2004, and it earns the title with sheer momentum. At its head sits Sermeq Kujalleq, one of the fastest and most productive glaciers outside Antarctica. On strong day, it advances roughly 40 meters inside a single day. Stand at the viewpoint long enough, and the scenery quietly rearranges itself in front of you, which is a strange feeling in a landscape that looks eternal. Each year, this one glacier carves tens of cubic kilometers of ice into the fjord, enough frozen water, by some calculations, to supply every tap in a large country. The bergs jam the fjord mouth, grind across a shallow underwater ridge, and then sail out into Disco Bay to begin journeys that can last years. Some drift all the way down into the North Atlantic shipping lanes. The iceberg that struck the Titanic in 1912 is widely believed to have started its life here, in this exact fjord. A wooden boardwalk leads from town across the tundra to the fjord's edge, and something interesting happens to people who walk it. They arrive with plans, hikes, boat trips, photo stops, and then they reach the overlook and simply stop. An hour disappears. Travelers who have seen half the world describe standing there in silence as the single activity of their day, and nobody who has stood there finds that strange. This shoreline also raised one of the greatest Arctic explorers who ever lived. Knud Rasmussen was born in Ilulissat in 1879, the son of a Danish missionary and a mother of Inuit descent. He grew up speaking Greenlandic first, driving dog teams across the ice, like his classmates. Years later, that childhood carried him and his companions across the entire Northwest Passage by dog sled, recording the stories and songs of every Inuit community along the way. His childhood home still stands in the middle of town, and today it is the Ilulissat Museum, filled with photographs from his expeditions. Rasmussen is often quoted as saying he asked for nothing more than winter and dogs. The rest of the world could keep itself. To understand the country that shaped him, though, you have to visit the capital that now speaks for it. Nuuk is home to about 19,000 people, which makes it one of the smallest capital cities on the planet, smaller than many neighborhoods in an ordinary American suburb. Yet inside this small grid of streets, you will find a parliament, a university, a national museum, art galleries, and cafes serving flat whites next to fishermen unloading their morning catch. It is a complete country compressed into a town. The first thing every visitor photographs is the color. Red houses, blue houses, yellow, green, black, scattered over the rocks like spilled candy. But the palette began as a filing system. In the colonial era, when houses arrived as timber kits and streets had no names, the color told you what a building was for. Red meant the church or the trade. Yellow meant the hospital and its doctors. Blue marked the fish plants. Green the radio and telephone service. Black the police. The whole town was a map you could read from the harbor. For most of its history, this capital had a strange handicap. Big jets simply could not land here. The old runway was too short, wedged between mountains. So international travelers touched down at a former military strip hundreds of kilometers away and doubled back on small planes. Then, in November 2024, a brand new runway opened, and for the first time ever, airliners from Copenhagen began landing in the capital itself. The following summer, a jet from Nuuk touched down, the first regular direct flight between the United States and Greenland. An island the world kept talking about finally opened its own front door. The city's story starts at the old colonial harbor, where a statue of Hans Egede looks down from a hill. He was the Danish-Norwegian missionary who founded Nuuk in 1728 as a small trading post. Everything since, the parliament, the university, the container port, grew from that cluster of huts by the water. Modern Nuuk lives between worlds with complete confidence. Teenagers stream the same shows as teenagers in Chicago, and the supermarket sells frozen pizza 3 shelves away from locally hunted reindeer. But to find the chapter of Greenland's story that most Americans never expect, you need to fly inland, to a town the United States built itself. Deep at the end of a 170-kilometer fjord, far from the coastal storms, sits a town that does not look like the rest of Greenland. Straight streets, long, low buildings, an enormous runway in the middle of nowhere. Kangerlussuaq exists because American engineers built an airbase here during the Second World War, when Greenland suddenly mattered to the whole North Atlantic. For decades, this strip of tarmac was the island's main gateway to the world. The Americans left behind one gift that travelers treasure today. A rough, gravel road runs east from town through a valley of musk, oxen, and reindeer. After about an hour, it arrives at something almost nowhere else on Earth offers: the edge of the Greenland ice sheet, reachable by ordinary car. You step off the dusty ground straight onto a frozen continent that stretches away for 1,000 miles. It is the closest thing that exists to a parking lot at the end of the world. America's interest in this island runs deeper than most people realize. In December 1946, US Secretary of State James Burns quietly offered Denmark $100 million in gold for Greenland. The Danes were stunned, and they did not sell. The episode stayed buried in diplomatic archives for half a century before historians dug it out. Proof that the idea making headlines today is, in fact, one of the oldest ideas in the filing cabinet. What Denmark did allow was a base. In 1951, at the island's far northwestern corner, American crews raised an installation called Thule in one of the harshest inhabited climates on the planet. Generations of airmen and their families served rotations up there, watching the polar sky through the long darkness. In 2023, the base took a Greenlandic name, Pituffik Space Base, honoring the ground it stands on. It remains the northernmost American military installation in the world. Decades later, the world is talking about this island again, and the people who actually live here mostly wish it would ask them first. That is all the politics you will hear in this film. Because the far more interesting story is how daily life actually works out here. And for that, we go to the coast, to a town that does ordinary living better than almost anywhere in the Arctic. Sisimiut is Greenland's second-largest town, home to about 5,500 people, and it may be the best place on the island to answer the question visitors ask most. What is normal life actually like up here? It climbs over rocky hills just north of the Arctic Circle. Modern apartment blocks standing beside little wooden houses from another century. Snowmobiles parked next to baby strollers. Normal life begins with a ship. Nearly everything in the supermarket, flour, diapers, toothpaste, apples, arrives by sea on the red vessels of the Royal Arctic Line, threading up the coast week after week. Local fish and reindeer are affordable and excellent. Anything that traveled far is not. Fresh strawberries can cost like a small gift, and a simple bag of groceries often runs double what it would in Denmark. People shop with a calendar in their heads, because the ship's schedule is the town's heartbeat. What Greenlanders lack in cheap imports, they repay in hospitality. The heart of social life is the cathedrals, an open-door coffee party thrown for a birthday, a confirmation, a first day of school. The whole town is quietly welcome. Guests flow through the house in shifts all afternoon, eating cake and dried fish, drinking coffee, chatting for 20 minutes, and making room for the next wave. Nobody sends invitations. Everybody knows. Weekends belong to the land. In winter, families ride dog sleds and skis into the backcountry behind town. In summer, they fish for Arctic char in the rivers, pick berries on the hillsides, and play football on gravel pitches with icebergs floating past the touchline. The word for it all is the same word people use everywhere. But outdoors simply means more when the outdoors is this size. Underneath it all, one industry keeps the lights on. Fishing accounts for roughly 90% of Greenland's exports, and towns like Sisimiut live by the rhythm of the trawlers and the processing plants. It is honest, hard, cold work, and it funds the schools, the clinics, and the coffee for every kafamik on the coast. Yet money is only half of how people survive here. The other half is older, and it lives one bay further north. "600 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, a mountain rises straight out of the sea in the shape of a heart. In Greenlandic, Uummannaq means roughly heart-shaped, and beneath its two granite lobes clings one of the most beautiful villages in the Arctic. Houses in every color sit wedged between boulders. Sled dogs doze on the bare rock, and icebergs park in the bay like ships at anchor. This is a good place to honor the invention that made Greenland livable in the first place. The kayak, Kujalleq in Greenlandic, was engineered here in the Arctic by Inuit hunters, built from driftwood and sealskin, tailored to its owner's body like a suit. And with it came a skill that decided who came home. In water this cold, a capsized hunter has only minutes. So hunters mastered the role, flipping fully underwater and rising again on the other side, using nothing but a twist of the hips and a sweep of the paddle. It was not sport, it was the line between a widow and a dinner. In 1972, on an abandoned shore not far from here, two brothers out hunting stumbled onto a shallow rock grave at a place called Ilulissat. Inside lay 8 people, 6 women, a small boy, and a 6-month-old baby, who had been laid to rest around 500 years earlier. The dry polar air had kept them almost whole. Their skin, their hair, even the delicate stitching of their sealskin clothes had survived 5 centuries in the cold. Scientists learned an enormous amount from the find, but for Greenlanders, its meaning is quieter. The clothing showed engineering worthy of a laboratory. Double-layered skins, waterproof seams, tiny boots sewn for the baby. These were not people scraping by at the edge of the world. They were masters of it, and the ice had kept them safe, so their descendants could look them in the face. That old knowledge is not in a museum case. Hunters in Uummannaq still read the ice by its color and sound. White where it carries a sled, gray where it lies, black where it kills. Elders can glance across a frozen bay and tell you where not to stand. Farther south, though, the island shows a completely different face, one with grass on it. Sail into the fjords of the far south in July, and you will wonder if the captain took a wrong turn. The hillsides are green. Sheep graze on real grass. Farmers cut hay against a backdrop of drifting ice, and potato fields ripen where the fjord water warms the valley floor. This is the Greenland almost nobody imagines, and it is exactly the Greenland one famous Viking wanted you to imagine. Around the year 985, a hot-tempered Norseman named Eric the Red arrived here after being exiled from Iceland over a feud. He found deep fjords, summer pasture, and no neighbors. And when he sailed back to recruit settlers, he gave his discovery a name chosen like an advertisement. Call it Greenland, The sagas tell us he reasoned, and people will want to go there. It may be the first marketing campaign in recorded history, and it worked. 25 ships set out, 14 made it. A colony was born. The Norse lived here for nearly 500 years. They built farms, churches, and a small cathedral, traded walrus ivory to Europe, and raised generations under these cliffs. And then, in the 15th century, they simply vanished from the record. A cooling climate, collapsing trade, thinning soil. Historians still argue about the mixture. The stone walls at Kangerlussuaq and Valsi stand exactly where they left them, holding the question open. The reversal that followed has a quiet poetry to it. Today, the descendants of the Inuit, the people who out-adapted the Vikings, run sheep farms on those same Norse pastures. Children grow up herding lambs within sight of thousand-year-old ruins, and southern Greenland lamb is served in restaurants as a delicacy. The land remembered how to feed people. It just changed whose people. The south holds one more surprise in the harbor town of Kangerlussuaq. In the early 1990s, local artist Aka Her invited fellow artists from across the Nordic countries to carve directly into the town's rocks, and 18 of them did. Today, about 40 faces, whales, and symbols emerge from boulders and cliff walls all over town, an open-air gallery that can never be moved. Walking to the bakery becomes a treasure hunt. It is the South in a single image, art, stone, and daily life sharing the same ground. The East Coast shares none of this softness. Flip the map to Greenland's east coast, and the rules change. This shore faces Europe. Iceland is only 2 hours away by plane. Yet, it is the loneliest side of the island. A river of polar sea ice presses down the coast for much of the year, sealing harbors and keeping ships away. Fewer than 4,000 people live along a coastline, stretching as far as from Miami to Boston. The metropolis of the east is Tasiilaq, population about 2,000. It sits in a bowl of jagged peaks on Uummannaq Island, its painted houses glowing against the grey rock like embers in a fireplace. By local standards, it is a true city, with a hospital, a school, and a supermarket. Its longest road runs about 3 kilometers, and then simply ends where the mountains begin. That road is a good introduction to Greenlandic geography because it connects to nothing. There is not a single road between any two towns in all of Greenland. Not one. Every journey beyond your own streets happens by boat in summer, by dog sled or snowmobile in winter, by helicopter when the weather allows, or not at all. Neighbors 2 fjords apart might as well live on separate islands, and every Greenlander plans life around that fact. The East also keeps a stranger monument. On a gravel plain up the coast lies Bluey East 2, an American airfield abandoned after the Second World War. For decades, thousands of rusting fuel drums sat stacked against the mountains, slowly bleeding orange onto the tundra. A reminder that the outside world sometimes arrives, uses, and forgets. In recent years, Cleanup crews have finally begun hauling the wreckage away, and the plane is slowly returning to silence. Beyond Tasiilaq, the settlements shrink until they nearly disappear. In Tinitekilaq, fewer than 100 people live at the edge of a fjord filled with drifting ice. There is a small store, a chapel, and a silence so complete that visitors describe hearing their own heartbeat, broken every so often by the oldest sound in Greenland. Somewhere between the houses, a sled dog lifts its head and howls, and that sound deserves its own chapter. Greenland runs on an alliance between two species. The Greenland dog is one of the oldest sled dog breeds on Earth, wolf-boned and weatherproof, and the country protects it like a national treasure. Above the Arctic Circle and along the East Coast, the law is blunt. No outside dogs may enter the sled dog districts, and a Greenland dog that leaves may never come back. The bloodline that pulled hunters across this ice for centuries is not going to be diluted on anyone's watch. Do not mistake them for pets. A dog team is a working crew, and the driver is its foreman. A hunter knows each animal's temper, appetite, and rank, which dog leads, which dog bluffs, which young dog is ready for the harness. Commands are spoken, not shouted. Trust is built over years of shared weather. Ask a hunter what his team means to him, and he will not say he loves his dogs. He will say he depends on them, which up here is the deeper compliment. Now comes the honest part of this chapter. 20 years ago, this island had roughly twice as many sled dogs as it does today. The count has fallen to somewhere near 15,000, and the reasons are painfully practical. The sea ice forms later and breaks up earlier, shrinking the sledding season. Snowmobiles do not need feeding through the summer. On hillsides, where 50 dogs once howled at the moon, rows of empty stakes now stand in the grass. Yet, in the far north, the alliance holds. In Uummannaq, one of the northernmost towns on the planet, hunters still choose dogs over engines for journeys onto the frozen sea. For a reason no machine has answered. A dog team feels thin ice through its paws and refuses to cross. A snowmobile drives straight on until the crack. Out where a mistake means the water, the old technology is still the smart one, and the drumming of paws on snow remains the signature sound of the town. The elders in Uummannaq say the ice arrives a little later every year, and no one argues with them. But walk past the dog yards on any winter morning and you will see the teams already awake, noses pointed at the fjord, waiting for the day's decision. They are not worried. Waiting for the ice is the oldest job in Greenland. Zoom out, and the scale of this island finally lands. The entire northeast, nearly 1 million square kilometers, is a single national park, the largest in the world, bigger than France and Spain combined. Its permanent population is 0. Musk oxen, polar bears, and walrus patrol coastlines that can go years without a human footprint. Most countries set aside their leftover land for nature. Greenland set aside a territory the size of an empire. Back in Ilulissat, the iceberg that made the town briefly famous has finished its performance. What remains of it drifts in pieces out across Disco Bay, melting into the same water that carried its ancestors past these windows for thousands of years. The webcam is still streaming. The bay it watches has already redrawn itself a dozen times since July, and the town has cooked roughly as many dinners without once finding that remarkable. The world tends to tell Greenland's story as a struggle against cold, against darkness, against distance. Greenlanders themselves rarely use that word. A new generation is telling the island's story its own way. A mining engineer named Uummannaq started filming little videos explaining her homeland, how to eat dried fish, why the houses have colors, what the dark season feels like, and became the most watched Greenlander on Earth. In 2025, her neighbors elected her to parliament. The young people here are not leaving the island. They are introducing it. Because what looks like hardship from the outside works differently from the inside. In a country of 56,000, nobody is anonymous and nobody is spare. Every hunter, nurse, teacher, and boat mechanic is personally necessary, known by name up and down the coast. The winters are long, the strawberries are expensive, and the nearest big city is an ocean away. In exchange, no one is ever a stranger, and no one's life is ever small. People here do not fight the ice. They set their clocks by it. They fish when it opens, travel when it hardens, and stand still when it speaks. That is the answer the headlines keep missing about this island. The calmest people on Earth are not the ones who own the ground they stand on. They are the ones who understand it. And tonight, in Ilulissat, behind a red wooden house above the bay, a family is finishing dinner while a mountain of ice slides quietly past the kitchen window. Nobody gets up, it is just the neighbors passing by. Thank you for traveling Greenland with us. If you or someone you love once served at Thule Pitufik today, tell us in the comments what the top of the world looked like. And be honest with us. Could you live through 2 months of polar night if the reward was this? If this journey moved you, subscribe and join us. The next island is already waiting.